We're complete.
Excellent. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So welcome to everyone that is joining us. As I said, this is a special, an SPP special, I think is probably the best way to describe it. For those who don't know about the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, perhaps you're joining us for the first time. We're delighted to have you. The Sustainable Procurement Pledge is a phenomenal non-profit organisation now, I think it's safe to say, that is really about helping procurement to make it easier to embed sustainability and responsibility into its ways of working. It was launched over 2 years ago, but has only just become a formal organisation, and we're very, very excited to be joined by an increasingly fantastic range of speakers who are helping us understand exactly how procurement can get their heads around some of these key issues. So today is no different. We're going to be talking about social procurement and what it means. So delighted to be joined by a phenomenal panel. I'd like to welcome, as I said, the speakers to introduce themselves. Who wants to introduce themselves first?
I'll go, if you can see me. Yeah, hi, I'm Jaime Paiva. I'm head of procurement for Zurich Insurance in Europe. I'll keep it short so that we have more time to discuss.
Excellent.
Hi everybody, my name is Mick Jackson. I am the founder of the Wildhearts group in the UK, and we are cited as Social Enterprise UK as one of the world's leading B2B social businesses. And I was invited to speak today by Jaime in Zurich, who are a great partner of ours. I'm looking forward to chatting to you all. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Can continue. Hi everyone, my name is Lucy. I'm part of the Yunus.
Your sound's a little bit muffled. Sorry, Lucy, do you want to?
Would it be? Is it better like that?
Still very quiet. Still very quiet. It's very normal. Don't worry. It always happens.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Lucy. I'm part of the Yunus Social Business Organization, leading our program Unusual Partners that I will present later on. And thanks everyone for joining.
Excellent. And is that everybody? Have we got everyone on here that's going to be speaking? Have we got the team?
I think. Hi, Oliver. I think we also have Matt Sparks as well with us.
Yes, please.
Matt,
Yeah.
I think you're here.
Yeah, sorry, I assumed I was having a modest secondary role. I should jump in now.
No, Matt.
Don't take yourself down.
Okay, so Matt Sparks from Linklaters. I look after sustainability at the firm, which includes our social impact work and our engagement with social enterprises from that angle. So I look forward to speaking a bit later.
Excellent. And a special thanks to Desiree, who's part of the SPP team, for pulling this this group together. As I said, fantastic range of speakers, and we're absolutely delighted to have you here today. So very keen to kick this off and have the conversation about where this comes from. So perhaps we can start with a conversation about what are we talking about today? We're talking about social procurement. What does it mean? So perhaps I can ask the panel to share some of their reflections and what does it mean to you, and perhaps how do you all tie this together? And I know that certainly from your own point of view, Matt, you're a practitioner putting this into practice as well. So who wants to start and tackle that question of why we're here today on social procurement?
I'll have a go again.
Yeah, please do.
So yeah, so we started with social procurement, as we call it, Zurich, about 5-6 years ago. It was, I think, an opportunistic move that we had. We were discussing with Wildhearts actually about the possibility for them to become our statutory supplier in the UK, and then our incumbent had a problem back then. We had to go to Wildhearts and see if they could start working with us much earlier, I think, than we were considering, and they did so. So since then, we never looked back really. Social procurement for us is about working with social enterprise or social business and use our buying power to do good business. So to help by spending money that we would be spending anyway, with organizations that have a social and environmental mission and therefore helping sustainability overall. It's a concept that we have, as I said, developed in the UK a few years ago, at least in our organization. And over the last 12, 18 months, we have been trying to expand this to other geographies and markets as well.
Excellent. That's good. I think that's an important context because, as I said, it was what you're going to hear today. Some fantastic presentations, and I think the Yunus presentation, I think I'm particularly looking forward to. But we got to apply this practically. What does this mean for the people that are listening, and what does it mean for the likes of yourselves, Jamie and Matt, and others that are making this happen? So without further ado, I'm going to ask Yunus to do the presentation and share the story from your world. Have you got your slides ready? You're happy to share your own slides, I believe.
Let me share my...
There you go, Lucy.
Know if you don't hear me well, because normally
we still can't hear you that well,
be...
I'm afraid.
Okay, I'm going to try to speak loud.
Yep, that's a bit better. Don't worry.
That's what I usually enjoy, but okay, let me try to be loud. So, hi everyone. As I said, my name is Lucy. I'm leading our program Unusual Partners dedicated to social procurement at Yunus Social Business. I'm here today with Joe Batista, who is our partnership manager and who will be here in the chat room with you. And first, let me say to all the team that we are really happy and here with all of you. Thanks everyone for obviously giving us time and attention. For us, the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, it's such a great network that takes on the rising issues and opportunities for sustainability and for procurement and supply chain function. I would like to thank the entire team that has been organizing this now in a very professional way. So it's really a pleasure to be working with you. And now, for those who don't know this strange word Yunus, that is part of our name, it actually comes from the name of our co-founder, the Professor Mohamed Yunus, who is also the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. He is recognized for many people as the father of microcredit and the inventor of the concept of social business. He has inspired thousands and thousands of people all around the world, including CEOs and politics, on how to change our mindset to really drive business and turn it into a force of good. Our organization, Yunus Business, is dedicated to support social business, as the name says. We do this through financial investment. We have investment funds, for instance, in Uganda, Kenya, Brazil, India. We all link the concept of social business into the corporate world. We do this through three main avenues. First is social intrapreneurship and not entrepreneurship, where we turn employees into agents of change inside the company. We also do venture building, where we have co-created more than 20 social ventures with multinational companies in very diverse industries. And finally, with social procurement, which is our focus for the webinar today. Last year, we conducted a research study in partnership with the World Economic Forum and several other organizations to better understand this topic of social procurement, its challenges and its successes from the corporate perspective. As we take the opportunity to go through it today together, I would like to also mention that the manual is available on our website and through the SPP resources, so you can have access to it for free. And first, as you were mentioning it, Jamie, this topic is really interesting, and I'm going to try to define it quickly, even though many people could do it better than I do, I guess. It's the process for companies to select social businesses or social enterprises as suppliers and buy them goods or services. At YSB, we often use the term social business, that is our own term, but some countries have already their own definition or legal status associated with the terminology social enterprise. For today's seminar, we can adopt the European level definition, wherein the social objective of contributing to the common goods is the main reason for the commercial activity. Importantly, the profits of social enterprises are mainly reinvested to achieve this social objective. Now we also sometimes encompass environmental objective as well. It's been quite recent, I would say. And so how does social procurement fit into the global picture of sustainable procurement and supply chain for companies? And as sustainability is quickly moving from a side topic to the core of corporate strategies, especially during the pandemic, there are now many figures and reports and things that we see that are published. If I can share one that I find quite striking in terms of mindset change, if we take a look at the last EcoVadis barometer, it showed that sustainability is now mentioned by 63% of executives as the key priority for their supply chain, compared to only 25% only 2 years ago. And it is related to another strong priority, that is resilience, as more than 60% of buyers and 70% of suppliers stated that sustainability helped them to go through the crisis. Given that 1 out of 5 supply chain barely survived the beginning of this pandemic, it is clearly a compelling lesson that we can learn here. Sustainability is now being a competitive advantage for the early adopters, and the late ones will suffer in the near future or are already now suffering, actually. But driving sustainability is absolutely no easy task, and it requires a multi-level process, as you all know. If we take a look on the right now, this is the Sustainability Supply Chain Leadership Ladder. This one is adapted from the BCR model. When we are speaking with large companies and multinationals, getting awareness and visibility and ensuring compliance still get the core of the attention, because it requires so much resources, data management, negotiation with your conventional supplier. Managers sometimes feel stuck into what is called the compliance trap on stage 1 of the ladder, and have difficulties to enter in all the steps of this ladder, moving from a do not harm to a do good approach. And I don't know if that resonates with you. It might be the case, but I found it to be interesting, this idea of compliance trap. Our argument here with social procurement is that we see the opportunity that lies with it to leapfrog the ladder and create direct and tangible impact, because this impact is embedded in the very nature of these suppliers. And just, I want to make things clear. We are not saying that social procurement replaces the other stages. You need to tackle all of them at the same time and slowly getting better at it. And each of them, apparently my internet connection is pretty bad, so if you can hear me. And so you need to enter to all those steps in the ladder and improving slowly the performance for each of them. In that sense, social procurement can be catalytic and be complementary to the other steps. And no matter in which industry do you work with or with which procurement category you are focusing on, social procurement can be leveraged in many cases. We have sometimes the image, the bias that social enterprise will only provide raw commodities or low-skilled labor-intensive services. Yes, that's the case. It was matured, and today social enterprises can cover a wide range of product and services, including IT services or product end of life services. You can see here on the slide some example of social enterprise that we have featured as case study in the manual, such as the Jordan River Foundation, who manufactures goods for IKEA at global level, Ares Group that provides logistics services for multinationals such as Vinci or L'Oreal, or even From Babies with Love that offer parental gift services for HR department to companies in many countries in Europe. We will have concrete examples after me, especially with Wildhearts, but something that I would like you to remember here is that it already happens for many companies, and it can happen for you at many parts of your value chain. Our goal with our program Unusual Partner will be to help you to find the right partner, to scope the opportunities in your value chain, and then get ready for them the same way as they're going to need to be ready for you. And something that I was saying is that there are many companies that already or have extensive experience to social procurement. In 2020, SAP launched their 5x5 initiative, which means that they will source 5% of their addressable spend from social entrepreneurs on top of 5% from diverse suppliers by 2025. There are also national cross-sector organizations that do many initiatives. One of the most experienced organizations in social procurement, Social Enterprise UK, and greetings to Andy, who I believe is here with us today, organize in the UK the Bi-Social Challenge, the Bi-Social Corporate Challenge that gathers now many high-profile companies such as Deloitte, Johnson & Johnson, or Zurich and Linklaters who are here with us today. And at this stage, you might ask yourself, yes, this is nice, it's interesting, great, but what's the real value for me and for my company? Why would I start doing this? From the research that we have done, we have identified 3 layers of value for procurement and corporate managers. No matter if you have one single partnership with a social enterprise or if you commit largely to this topic. And I'm going to touch upon these layers quickly. The first one is strategic reason. More than 80% of our interviewed companies engage in this because it's part of their larger purpose and commitment as a company. 60% of them because it creates brand differentiation and answers customer demand for socially responsible products. And we've seen already that there are multiple strategic reasons to do so. The second layer is what we can call a myth-busting fact. Social enterprises are actually frequently competitive on regular procurement KPIs. And I think that's something very important to say today. I'm going to quote here the head of corporate responsibility at SAP, Alexandra van der Plug, who says that the social enterprise we are working with are businesses like any other. They have the same standards when it comes to professionalism, product quality, and quantity. Not saying that everything is simple here, it varies a lot according to which product and industry we are talking about, but you need to give a chance to social entrepreneurs and seeing them as potential suppliers by acknowledging that 80% of them are found to be competitive on supply assurance and quality, 60% on price and volumes, and 50% on timing. So it's possible for you to find social enterprises that are competitive, and you can get a great product or services compared to traditional suppliers. Plus this called the impact premium. Being social is not only strategic or competitive, it also pays off actually. If you ask many CEOs today in the corporate world, what are their main concerns? They will tell you employee engagement, attracting talents, and social procurement can be a way to address that. As we found that for more than 80% of the companies we have interviewed, they actually saw the real benefit for this, as well as other benefits you can see in the manual. So based on our research, the question is no longer why should you enter into social procurement, but what are your reasons to not start doing this way? And I know that everyone is very keen usually to have less theory and more concrete cases. So let me show you one of my favorite partnerships that I can share. The social enterprise is called Plastic for Change. It is based in India. Its founder is named Andrew Almack. Plastic for Change provides to company a platform to source processed recycled plastics. Their particularity is that on top of the environmental impact of the recycled plastic itself, their goal is actually to improve the livelihoods of the informal waste collectors in India by providing them with clear, stable prices, but also training and empowerment capacity building. And after Andrew chased down an executive from the body shop in a conference to get their attention and show their value proposition, that sometimes happens in business development. And after 3 years of working to improve their volume, their capacity, their compliance, quality, cost optimization, Plastic for Change now furnishes the body shop for their hair care product packaging, and their partnership created more than 600 press articles and a great consumer engagement. So it takes time, but it's rewarding because on top of a great product, you can also have the opportunity to drive impact and build unique supplier stories. And the good news is that you don't have to start alone with social procurement. Today, you will hear from managers who have a lot of experience in doing this and who are willing to share their experience and their best practices. And this is some things that we are trying to build upon as well. For instance, we developed the tool that you can see called the 5S adaptation wheel that shares best practices on how to tackle strategy, stakeholders inside the company, and how to convince other people in your company to come aboard. System, which is another word for processes, scale, and storytelling. And one of the main barriers that companies find is the pipeline building, with 70% of our interviewed companies mentioning that they struggle to find the right partner. So this is why we have created our program Unusual Partners, dedicated to help companies start with social procurement. It's a cross-sector program for this year that consists in 2 phases, and you can choose to do both or one of them. During the first phase, we will scope opportunities in your value chain, look for potential suppliers worldwide based on your company's needs, connecting with national or regional partners. There are many in Europe, but also in the global south, where there is a less structured ecosystem, and do a matchmaking phase to select the most promising social enterprises for you. Then, because we don't expect the contract to just happen right away, we will start a support program where we will accompany both the company and the social enterprises to build the right processes to be able to start a partnership. So for those who are interested in hearing more about this program, please feel free to connect with me or Joe on LinkedIn, or I believe that Joe will also share like a Calendly link on the chat if you want to book a call right away. So once again, thanks everyone. We really appreciate to be here to have this conversation going, and I'm going to pass on again to Oliver.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. And thank you for probably screaming down your microphone in your house. We did hear you. It was okay. It was fine. And a great presentation. It was really good. As I said, I think really practical. I love the idea of unusual partners. This could not be true in responsible business. We need to think outside the box about who we're going to work with. We put ourselves in silos way too much with our own and everything else, and I really like that that concept. Before we move on, I'm just going to run a quick poll, which I should have done at the start if I'd been more organized, but obviously I'm not. I'm going to ask the audience to give us an understanding of what sort of understanding do you have about social procurement. Obviously, Lucy's presentation has helped actually frame this for us, but I'm just going to launch a poll now for a few seconds and tell us, how familiar are you with social procurement as a concept? It's always fascinating watching the numbers here. Well, no one else can, but good. I'm going to give it one more. And welcome to everyone who's just joined us and has joined us a little bit late. You haven't missed much at all, but other than Lucy's great presentation, but we've got plenty more to come. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that there are a few people. It's good to see that there are people completely embedded in it, but I would say most people have got a little way to go. So hopefully that gives a framing for the rest of you to do this. Another quick point, which I should have raised at the start, in terms of questions, there are tons of questions and comments, and this is very important. Please do add them to the chat. We will be saving the chat. We'll be digesting the chat, and we'll be producing some insight from the chat. So if you have any thoughts, if you have any opinions, if you have any links, please do put them in the chat and we'll congregate all those together. Unfortunately, poor old Sonia has to pick out all the questions from the chat, which is quite a task because this looks like there's already so many. So if you have got a question, do put it in the chat. We will filter it through. We will come back to the end with the speakers. Also, if you do want to ask a question verbally yourself, you can raise your hand in the reactions button, and that will all be a combination of those two. We'll get lots of questions at the probably, I'm not even going to say the end, probably halfway through this session, because it's very much a conversation. Okay, over to you, Mick, if you don't mind picking up the baton from there.
Thank you so much. I shall okay.
And I know you've got a video to share, is that right, Mick?
Yeah, it's just in my slides, so I am give me a second.
Technology will, I'm sure, be absolutely fine. I can't think of any reason why it wouldn't be. So I'm sure it'll be fine. But if it isn't, then no doubt we can share it.
That's interesting. My slides.
That's fine. So if anyone's got any other case studies or examples of social procurement or social business, as I mentioned, do put them in the chat. We really like links. So if anyone's got any links to initiatives or examples or case studies or anything that you think people should know, we are trying to digest all of that together. So do put them into the chat. It would be really useful for us to put all of that together as well.
Sorry, bear with me.
Yeah, that's all right. At least we can hear you, Mick. That's the main thing. So we can hear you, we can see you, we just need your slides, but that's fine.
Mick, do you want me to play your slides? This is so
Weird, it's not, I tested this earlier, but it's not. Let me just try it one more time.
Yeah, that's fine. For those who are regulars to Sustainable Procurement Pledge meetings, you'll know that they are incredibly slick. And as I said, from start to finish, they're often incredibly professional. I jest as we make our way through this, but these are always the ways of working. We do have your slides, don't we, Mick, elsewhere if we need to share them.
I have them if you want me to play.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Sonia. I don't know why it's not coming up. Sorry, everybody. Okay.
You'll just need to tell Sonia when to move on.
Good stuff.
Lovely. Looking forward to hearing more. Mick. Cheers, Mick.
Thank you so much. If you go to the full screen, Sonia, I appreciate that, Sonia. Thank you so much. So if you go back to the original slide. No, don't play the video yet.
Shall I put the video on?
No, if you go to the holding slide, that'd be great.
There we go.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your patience. So I'm the founder of the Wildhearts group. It was founded over 10 years ago, and it was born out of other businesses that I had. I'd been fortunate in startups that I had a kind of business infrastructure from which to launch a social business. Here's the point, though. I had no idea what a social business was, and I had no idea that there was a global movement that was emerging at that time. I had just come back from a climbing expedition in Kashmir, and it had gone south very rapidly. And I think what it did for me was it confronted values that I'd been brought up with, but they brought it to the fore because I saw firsthand the implications of what it meant to be poor in the world. And in the rawest form, what it meant was they would send helicopters to evacuate injured or dead European climbers, but they would leave the locals to die. And that came back to haunt me repeatedly. And I swore to myself when it was -40 degrees on this glacier while I was trying to help this guy off the mountain, that if I ever got back home, I was going to reimagine what I did in business to try and use it to help people. And it was as vague as that. I'm going to launch a business, and I didn't know what it was going to be, and I'm going to use it to help people, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew why I had to do it. So that's where Wildhearts came from, business for good. After it, when I started chatting to people, they started saying, you do know you're trying to create a social business, do you? I was like, no idea. I remember in reference to Lucy, I was talking to a guy in Edinburgh, and a good friend of mine said, have you ever heard of Professor Muhammad Yunus? I was like, no. And I bought his book. And when I was invited to speak alongside Professor Yunus when he came to Glasgow, I asked him to sign my book, and just about every line in it was underlined and highlighted. And he said to me, what is it you do? And I said, I kind of want to do what you do. So where that led to was, if you don't mind, Sonia, going to the next slide, a short video that gives an introduction to what Wildhearts does globally.
Oh, where did it stop?
As is often the case in this instance, it's always the way. If we can't play it, then as I said, perhaps we can share a link to it in the chat. It's often the way with these things.
I think it is playing, actually. I can see it playing.
Yeah, it might be just the sound. I think we probably need to link the sound through. Perhaps you can commentate over the top, Mick.
No, it's fine. It's just music. So let's just leave it till it finishes, shall we?
Sound doesn't come through.
Yeah.
There we go.
So
Nestle plans and all that.
That was quite a jerky introduction to what we do globally. We went from funding microfinance and inclusive banking for women in countries such as Ghana to actually launching social businesses, which were banks. And Wildhearts now operates the largest banks for the rural poor women in Zambia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. And we also fund programs from Haiti all the way to India and beyond into Far Eastern Asia. The point being is, from this coming and talking to you as a business peer, when I set up the business, the idea was, how can I use business to help people? Not how do I set up a foundation that can ask for donations. That has its place. I've got some friends that work in some fantastic charities, but I was coming from well, I know how to build businesses, and that's the position I was coming from. So the first one, thinking with you, talking to you with your procurement heads on, it's no good talking to companies about what they should do. I find that arrogant and self-righteous. And if the world did what it should do, most of our problems would evaporate, but we don't, right? So I thought, how do we make it easy? How do we make it a no-brainer for companies to get involved? And as a result, the first company I launched was a business supplies company, right? So it was paper clips and pens and paper and folders, et cetera, et cetera. So it's now over 20,000 products of all these different business supplies, because such a commoditized business had very little emotional attachment in the minds of suppliers. If you could get the right price, the right service, and all these things are key, not ask people to suffer lower service and more price, better prices and da-da-da-da. It had to be vigorously competitive, but its social purpose, what it would empower some of the world's poorest people around the world. To put it in perspective, because of fantastic partners like Social Enterprise UK, and it's great to see Andy on the call, and brands like Zurich and Nestle, etc. Just before the lockdown, we grew at 56% in a market that was declining. And even during the lockdown, we won brands like Siemens, etc. Even though we never even met them in person, through meeting them remotely, they still made that decision to switch over to us. And one thing, to the point that Lucy was making and made very well, we were really seeing an increase in corporates in the UK switching over to social procurement before the lockdown. During the lockdown, it seems to have gone into absolute overdrive. I think the penny has finally dropped, that this idea of business sits here and society sits over here was never accurate and was toxic, that we are of society and we must contribute to society because, you know, spoiler alert, people who work in companies are also citizens with kids and healthcare needs, and they don't like walking past the homeless in the street, and they don't like seeing their kids suffering from mental illness, and they don't like to see trash not being recycled. So therefore, when you give them a credible way to bring their role to life and fulfill their values as people, surprise, surprise, it turns out to be that the company functions better. It attracts better staff, it retains better staff, and the staff are more engaged. And the evidence to that degree is overwhelming. So Wildhearts started with the business supplies, which was a no-brainer. And because of the relationships we formed with people like Jaime and the Zurich team, we started to go up the value chain. So the next company we launched was a digital agency and print agency, etc. And we're now winning significant clients doing digital marketing, digital print, and conventional print. We have a document storage business, and we also have a training business called Wildhearts Talent. And Jaime is one of the colleagues that we have trained. We train people from vice presidents all the way through to the graduates and apprentices for Barclays globally, same for Nestle, same with Zurich, same with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And what we're doing is training, and they pay us as business clients to train their people, but it's training them in entrepreneurial thinking with purpose. And the feedback from the way we train it and the way we bring it to life is exceptional. But the exciting thing, and I did have the most amazing video to show you, but I don't think we should try it, Sonia, is that the companies that pay for our services enables us to provide world-class business training for kids free. So every year, over 55,000 kids go through our programs. They go into positive destinations such as meaningful employment or college, etc. But no child has to pay for that, because we will never address social injustice and social mobility if the elite education is only for the parents who can pay. That was always wrong. And so therefore we are repurposing the spend of our clients, not only to empower the world's poorest women in their areas of need, but it closer to home. It doesn't make sense to say, well, we do microfinance globally. People say, well, why don't you do microfinance in the UK? That's not an articulate response to the social issues in the UK. A proper response to the UK is, how do we address social mobility of children who are born into underrepresented groups? And that's what we do there. So I don't know if we want to try the next video, because there is dialogue in this one. If it doesn't work, Sonia, we'll scoot to the end.
Yeah, I think the sound will probably unlikely work, I think, now that we're doing it from a different thing. So
It was not coming through the sound.
Okay,
yeah.
let me go back a couple of slides then.
We'll share it with everyone afterwards, don't worry.
So the next slide after the video was, okay, the podcast. So with her peers in mind, I have to really stress that I had been fortunate in business before. Like you know, I worked very hard and I had opportunities which I took advantage of. And one could say I had a nice life. However, when it came to developing a social business where on a personal level, I got to align my professional passions and interest with my deepest values as a person, not as a professional, to say that it enriched my life would be an understatement. It's made me a much better father. In my opinion, it's made me a better husband, but you can ask my wife about that, right? But my bottom line is
yourself, Mick.
Yeah, I'll take that one. But then our sales director, Colin Down, he's also joining us in the con. We attribute that the level of talent of people who join us is utterly exceptional, to the extent that I've had the heads of HR from some of the world's leading brands saying, what is your attraction strategy? See, we just put a little advert for interns, and then our interns go through our program and then we offer them employment at the end of it. That's kind of it. When we say that Wildhearts sells pens and paper, you go, okay, it does, or Wildhearts delivers training, or Wildhearts delivers digital media, whatever. It's why we deliver it, and it attracts the top talent you could dream of and retains them. And it has an immensely beneficial effect on yourself, because we say even a bad day at the office saves lives. So that's the conversations I have with your peers in some of the leading brands all around the world. So I thought it shouldn't just be me that has those conversations. We have to make this public knowledge. And so we created the Wildhearts Business for Good podcast. And I'd like to direct you with particular reference to some of the procurement people, because they all started saying the same thing, which I think is really exciting. So as Linda Candia, the Chief of Procurement in Johnson & Johnson, Peter Holbrook, the Head of Social Enterprise UK, and I have to say again, Social Enterprise UK have been the most amazing ambassadors for the sector in the UK. And in particular, their Bi-Social Corporate Challenge, of which Zurich is a signatory and Nestle are a signatory and Linklater is a signatory. It is no accident that the vast majority of those brands are fantastic partners and in many cases good friends personally of the Wildhearts team. So we're creating a movement of peers in the UK, and SE UK are basically the instigators of that. Now there's something these procurement peers started saying which I think is very, very exciting, and that is that, if I can cite Robin Sundram, the head of sustainable purchasing in Nestle, he said in the past, people thought procurement teams kind of sat in the corner and worked with spreadsheets and they got you stuff, hopefully at a good price. And he says, that's how we were kind of seen. And that's how sometimes we saw ourselves. He says, now we are the vanguard of the company's values. You see, I love studying ESG reports, and the kiss of death is when you have the big glossy brochure saying how wonderful your social environmental policy is, and then people dig down going, yeah, but that's not what leads to your purchasing decisions or your investment or recruitment decisions, is it? And these companies are being called out. We call them bad Samaritans, right? They try to appear like they're good, but underneath it's not credible. That has an exponentially negative impact on a company's reputation. Where you demonstrate you're serious about this stuff is where you spend your money, where you choose to invest, in Nestle's point, as they say, in the olden days, you would buy a bar of chocolate and it was like, does it taste good with a cup of tea or coffee? Is it got a cool wrapper? That's kind of it. Now, and this is from the heads of marketing training in Nestle, say now consumers want to know, where did you source it? How did you source it? How did you treat the people who produced it? How did you get it here? And how will it affect my health once I eat it? And that is a very different marketing discussion, which goes right to the heart of your business processes. So when it comes to procurement, Robin in his podcast was talking about how now they have the duty, but also the massive opportunity, just like Jaime in Zurich as well. And he's got some fantastic stories for what they're doing in a tangible way, is that they're now the vanguard for the company's values. They are the aggregators of innovation. They're reaching out to the companies that Lucy cited, such as the recycling and the plastic company in India, and going, I've discovered this amazing company. And they're bringing that back to their peers internally and really animating and inspiring their colleagues, saying, I know you need to source X, but have you ever thought maybe you could help X offenders while you're doing it? Or maybe you could help at-risk kids get into employment? And it's really having a wonderful beneficial effect on their colleagues, who many of them knew that was even possible. It won't cost you more. The service will be good, if not even better, because Wildhearts, that's what we're told we are, our service is better, but you will have a tangible output socially, environmentally as a result. So if you want an absolute masterclass, in my opinion, on how to bring social procurement to life within your organization, then if you listen to Jeanette Evan-Turner's podcast in that regard, it is fantastic. Towards the end, she talks about, these are my tips for how you do this. Similar with Robin, and similar with Len to Candia. If you go to the next slide, please, Sonia. You jumped forward one. Right, so if you could go back, you can see on the side there, through our procurement partners, jump back one for me, Sonia, will you? Do you mind? And one more. There we go. So that's, and one forward. There we go. So in terms of the other exciting thing about social business, which I'm keen to impress upon you, and what it tends to release in your colleagues if you work in large corporates, is this idea that a relationship ceases, it becomes less transactional and more of a continuum of fulfilling your values, okay? So the video that we were going to show showed that our summits that we do around the world for school kids, we have summits at the United Nations in Geneva, we have summits throughout, throughout the country for young people to learn that business can be a force for good. Think of your kids, if you have kids. Are they getting positive role models from the media of what business can be? Are they actively wanting to go into business because they think it can fulfill their values? No. I was horrified to see that the best kids I was ever coming across, utterly brilliant young kids who were really doing their best at school from all different backgrounds, when I asked them if they were going to go into business, looked at me as if I'd asked them if they were going to become drug dealers or arms traders. Like, why would we do that? And this was the quote that really chilled me from a 16-year-old girl. Why would I want to do something that's caused all the problems that my generation will have to fix? Like, is that your impression of what business is from the media? So what we're doing is saying, have you seen what Linklaters are doing in terms of modern day slavery or legislation? Have you heard of Professor Yunus? Have you seen what Zurich are doing? It's not just insurance. Have you seen what Nestle do? And they go, oh, Nestle, but they go, no, that's the headlines. Have you really seen what they're doing? And really getting under the skin to inspire kids to become the responsible business leaders of the future. So we say if Wildhearts can transform 1.5 million lives and invest £30 million in social products around the world through business, what can you do? And it's inspiring that generation of leaders. So during the COP26 summit, we held the largest youth-led climate summit, and it wasn't about doom and gloom, and it wasn't catastrophizing. It was what businesses are doing and what young people can do to address and create the innovations to address the challenges the world's facing. And we had fantastic partners, I'm saying them all again, Zurich, Nestle, and Linklaters, who were contributing and educating the kids as to what they could do. So if you go to the next slide, Sonia, if you don't mind, I'll come to the end here. So these are a small selection of the brands we're working with. This is what's getting exciting. We started by talking about buying your paper clips, and then we started going up the value chain, right? And now we're training the senior executives of these brands and leveraging and empowering the resources to create ever more change. And more heavyweight global brands are coming on that journey. They were already on the journey. We've just kind of like dovetailed and we're starting going faster together. And they're not doing it because they have to do it. You want to hear Jaime and his team talk about this stuff, like they really, really get it. Because why wouldn't they? right? What person would not want to do this? So if you can find social businesses, and the work that Lucy's doing is fantastic, that say they will provide you great service, they will provide competitive pricing, and the rest is an added benefit, then why would companies not do it? And so this is what I would ask you to take away from my talk, right? Wildhearts says it's in the empowerment business. We empower women excluded from financial systems to become agents in their own communities and transform their own communities in a way it's right for them. We empower girls to stay in school in countries like South Africa by helping them manage their periods. Right. Incidentally, a concept inspired by Johnson & Johnson, who advised us as that's a strategy to do and helped us leverage our resources to do that. And we empower school kids of all backgrounds to become the responsible business leaders of the future. And how is that done? Because we empower procurement leaders to reimagine their role, reimagine their resources, and reimagine their reach. It's a whole new vision as to what procurement leaders can be. And I think as these kids that we work with go into the next generation, being excellent professionally and a creator of worthy, graceful, effective social impact will be synonymous. They will not be two separate things. They'll be one and the same, right? And it will be as preposterous to not think of being a business leader who creates meaningful wealth for the whole world as like Ron Burgundy with the big 70s moustache, chain smoking in the office. You go, it's a bit out of date, right? That is an old image. And the new leaders of the business are the ones who are creating wealth from all stakeholders, not just shareholders, or wealth not just for the owners, but all of society. And it's an absolute privilege to be a part of that movement. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Mick. That's really, really exciting. I do sometimes wonder, I'm a bit of Ron Burgundy sometimes, sat there with my with my cigar, but no, you made a great point. Phenomenal stories. One particular point that I think you made towards the end there that I think resonated with me and the Sustainable Procurement Pledge is this is about the future of the profession and the future of procurement leadership. As I said, Thomas and myself have been talking to lots of CPOs over the last few weeks, including many today, and a recurring theme is how do we as procurement leaders evolve our profession? What's our role? How do we keep this new seat at the table that we've suddenly got because of everything that's going on in the world? How do we maintain that? And how do we do something we can be proud of as a profession? So it was really interesting to hear you say that, and really impressive. And we got through it, and the story came through loud and clear. But as you said, we've got to really think about what this means for business. What does this mean for the likes of Zurich? And what does this mean for Linklaters and others? And I'm delighted, obviously, to have Desiree and colleagues and obviously Jamie here to talk about this. So, guys, I'm going to ask you a few questions as businesses in the room about what this means to you. And obviously, we've heard a little bit from you, Jamie, about Zurich. So I wonder if I might start with the Linklaters team. How have you got into social business? What does it mean to you guys? What does it? How and when have you begun looking at this?
Matt, can I defer to you?
That's quite the right then. Yeah, so we're part. You've heard us name checked a few times already. We are part of the Biosocial Challenge, and that's significant. So that's a movement that you've heard of UK businesses who are committed to spending at least £1 billion together in social enterprises, and that sent an important message internally. We started 3 or 4 years ago with that. We've made progress, not as much as I'd like, and I think quite a lot of my comments would be around sort of the learning and the more to do, the challenge perhaps. But it gave us a vehicle and an excuse to have the conversation about why aren't we doing this as much as we could be? Look at others, look at many of our clients. Mick sort of spoke or alluded to the fact there's sort of an ecosystem organisations, we buy stuff off one another. We're all in the same place. We're all interested in using our investments as socially beneficially as we can, wherever we can. And the Biosocial Challenge is a great introduction for us to the power of spend. And as I've seen on the comments down the side, you know, is it a clever way to do CSR? Well, it is, but actually it's simply a much more powerful way to do purchasing, and a much more sensible way. And increasingly, as we've heard over the pandemic, and the lines between business and society are blurred more and more, it's not even a clever way, but an intelligent way to use every pound of investment your organization is making, certainly going down a social enterprise route or a socially equivalent organization route is a sensible thing to do. So a relatively deliberately, I would say we've done it over the past 3 or 4 years, accidentally before then, but concerted way, probably the past sort of couple actually.
Okay. And Desiree, you're relatively new to the Linklaters team, of course, but you live and breathe this, of course, and a bit of a, dare I say, a rock star in this topic. I think. No
high praise. But yeah, no, thanks, Oliver. I think, so from my perspective coming in and working at my role, so my role is a brand new role for Linklaters. I've been brought in to help bring, you know, kind of bring it all together. There's been fantastic work done already in terms of the sustainable procurement practices that have been happening. And now it's just really bringing that together with a really kind of structured viewpoint of destination of where we want to go and what we want to achieve. And I think for me, this element is really exciting because as we look at topics like circular economy, we're looking at our waste, we're looking at technology, we're looking at achieving our science-based targets, reduction, you know, that we need to do with scope 3. And for me, I'm straight away thinking about the fantastic social enterprises that are out there that we could potentially be working with to help us achieve some of those things. And so for me, it's almost like I can see that, you know, like when we talk about the struggles that we have in, you know, exactly like Mick said, you know, it's about making sure we keep the quality and, you know, it's not just about cost but that there are professional organizations to work with highly skilled professionals, you know, fantastic creative ideas, you know, thinking outside the box, looking at how, because we can't, to fix the problems we have, we cannot keep thinking the same way. We cannot just keep doing the same thing. We have to be completely creative and outside the box with this. And so for me, that's the exciting thing about social procurement, social enterprises, and what that can help us do in the way that we tackle the challenges that we have. And to help, especially if a company's been doing, you know, a very old company been doing things a certain way, having that fresh insight, you know, that you can really partner with that supplier, with that social enterprise on to kind of speak into how you do business and you can do it better. And, you know, innovation, it's an exciting space.
Exactly. And as well as sustainability, I think procurement professionals are looking for ways to apply their creativity. And this is a perfect way to apply some creativity into the ways that they work. And it's a good angle to use, isn't it, to be thinking about this. I couldn't agree with that more. Jamie, obviously you're have been cited and you're working with the guys here. What sort of big examples have you got for actually procuring large contracts or projects around this? What sort of applications of this have you had?
Oh, that's a tough one, because most of the social businesses that we work with, they are of a very local nature. That's one typical thing. We have, I think, at Wildhearts, but we have perhaps 2 other social enterprises that do have presence in many countries, perhaps. If you measure by spend, and sorry for using spend here, but among, I think, that sourcing professionals, that's a common terminology. It was a project a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I think, with a social enterprise called 90 in the UK. And 90 is a specialized insurance consulting company. And they helped us putting up an innovation hub. So that took 2 years, perhaps. And we did spend a large amount of money with them, but completely paid back. The model was from the beginning that they wanted to apply their methodology to help us build the hub and then transfer the concept, the knowledge to us. And we still use 90 in many other parts of the company. But because they are consulting, this is not continuous business. And it's just perhaps worth mentioning here, they call themselves 90 because their mission is to use 90 or reinvest 90% of their profits into their social missions. So when we pay them, and we pay them equal price that we would be paying at the market, yeah, that is creating a profit, and that profit will be reinvested. And that's a typical thing of a social enterprise or social business as we know it.
Absolutely. Now, there is tons of questions here. So, Sonia, I'm going to come to you in a minute to have. Hopefully, you've managed to pick a few out. If people are happy to, if they wouldn't mind voicing their question rather than just having us read it out, I think it's more human. If you're not happy to, that's fine. If you want to actually voice a question, please do look at the reactions and put your hand up, and we can come to you in due course. We've got plenty of time for comments and questions. So, Sonia, I'll come to you in a second. But one obvious question, the burning question in anything to do around social responsibility or sustainability, is how do you measure it? And perhaps the problem is the fixation of trying to measure it. That may be part of the issue. But I think this is probably a question for all four of you, all five of you actually, in many ways. How do you start to sort of measure and track the value and actually report on this and justify it if you need to justify it? I know, Mick, you're going to tell us that you don't need to justify it and it should be just the way it works, and I agree. But this is going to be a burning question on many.
Well, I don't think you have to measure it, because I'll tell you one thing. When you start delivering growth like our sales team have delivered, you start, and it cracks us up, you start getting companies with absolute shamelessness pretending they deliver social impact. Yeah. And I could say, you look and go, I actually can't believe they can make statements like that. And they're coming from a position of, well, we have to compete with you. You go, well, that's not why we were set up. And so it's like, well, if they're saying that social stuff, we'll just say it too. So there are some people in sectors, and I've seen some corporates that have been called out, that if there isn't, and this is where social enterprise, again, UK have been fantastic, if there's not a standard that gives a procurement professional a chance to just peek behind the curtain and look under the bonnet and go, wow, what they're saying is real, is authentic, and is measured, then we're going to dilute and I think disparage the sector, because people will not have the confidence that what they're being told is accurate. And I think that's really crucial. We take real pride in how we understate our impact, and by the lens we go to measure it accurately. And my FD, who used to be my auditor, is obsessed with that. So it has to be measured, and credibly measured.
Incredibly good to hear. How have others feel about that? What have others been doing to actually put some cast iron?
I'd say all of it. I mean, the first thing I want to say is that, you know, the primary measure of success has to be that you're getting what you pay for, as it would be with any supplier arrangement. And I suppose that's paramount. You know, what we're always mindful of is, you know, first and foremost, we have to get what we would normally have got. Now, if we can get it through a social enterprise or equivalent, that is obviously preferable. But first and foremost, the quality, the cost, the reliability and everything else needs to be in place, because otherwise, I mean, one fear we always have is that if something goes wrong, the blame will be pinned on using a social enterprise. It won't be pinned on something going wrong. It will be pinned on the type of organization, which will probably be unfair. But the first test has to be, is it going to deliver? And you test it as much as anything else. The second one about the social gain, with a different hat on, I chair an outfit called B4SI, which is sort of social impact measurement framework. And we've put in place a framework that measures social investment through procurement. Not equivalent to the same as you'd put through a CR budget or anything else, but it begins to put a value on how much of your spend you are putting through social enterprises as a metric, which begins to do that. And then, of course, there's the impact you're making on the beneficiaries who are part of that social enterprise's sort of value chain or target. And that's probably still a bit more anecdotal and a bit more illustrative. But that serves an important purpose, because those are all benefits that you wouldn't get by simply signing a check and sending it off to a shareholder-led organisation. So I think it depends which way you look at it. But I do want to stress, first and foremost, you know, this isn't about risk, because one of the things that we've noticed is propensity not to risk, not to take a gamble on an organisation you're not familiar with. And this is the challenge, because social enterprises tend to be less familiar. It takes a sort of brave procurement specialist or brave CEO or somebody brave somewhere to stick their neck out and say, we'll provide some cover for you, do it, and let's see how we go. And I think that's the real value and the real contributions that procurement professionals can make, is to create an environment where these decisions appear less risky, where checks and balances are in place, but also where we're measuring the right breadth of benefits and returns, because it's not easy.
Yeah, excellent. That's another good thing procurement people are good at: bravery and measurement. So again, no excuses there, definitely. Jamie, anything to add to that in terms of how you've
So we do measure against spend as well, and that's actually a little bit frustrating because we think that we could do so much more. And when I see the percentage that we're using compared to the billions of dollars that we spend annually totally, I mean, it is sometimes depressive. So we do that. That's a very traditional mindset, I think, and we have that. One of the best reports that we have is actually from Wildhearts, because on a periodic basis, we receive from them something saying, through your account, through your spend, you have impacted so many different lives. So that makes it much more human, perhaps. Yeah, that's awesome. But we don't have that coming from the other organizations that we work with. But we mentioned here, and I think that Lucy also mentioned by Social Corporate Challenge organized by SE UK. And if I may use some of the statistics that they published last year in their annual report, throughout 5 years of the Corporate Challenge, there was a total spend from the companies participating there of £165 million. That total spend generated over £15 million of reinvestment in social missions, be it environmental or social. Yeah, so you can proxy perhaps if you want some 8%, 9% of the total spend being directed, and it might not be perfect, but it's already an indication that it does pay back.
Excellent. I'm very conscious, again, some absolutely phenomenal comments and thoughts and ideas added to the chat. If anyone else has any examples or metrics or ideas about how you can encapsulate the value, please do add them to the chat, because we do want to compile all of this. I'm going to one more question to the group of you before we get into the audience. We've got a bit of time. Is the obvious burning question again of what are people got to have their eyes open on when it comes to procuring and sourcing from social enterprises? What are some of the realities? What are some of the difficulties? What are some of the issues that you need to come across that you need to be aware of? What have you got to be prepared for? Who wants to pick that one up? I don't mind. How about the Linklaters team?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Desiree, do you want to follow in? Let's pick up a point Jamie made. You know, it's quite hard to find, with the honourable exception of Wildhearts, operators at scale, social enterprises who can do a huge chunk of your provision. You know, we've found it quite easy to procure goods and services at a very small scale. Nice to have, you know, corporate gifts and merchandising and bits and pieces around the edges, but large scale is difficult. And I think that is partly because of circumstance. Many social enterprises start small, need to grow. It's a bit chicken and egg. So I think an opportunity, there's a real space here for sort of procurement experts to come in and help these organizations possibly collaborate with one another, certainly help them to sort of bring together groups of equivalent organizations who can together scale up and produce a service or provide a service for larger corporates. Because I think there's a great deal of a lack of experience, I think, in the sector for nobody's fault, but a lot more hand holding is required, which I think actually creates, you know, real opportunities for synergy, for responsible business activity. There's a good story to be had there, but a little bit of support is required.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree, Oliver. Hand holding is the key thing here, I guess. We have another relationship where we are conducting stewardship calls with them on a bi-monthly basis, more or less, because we are trying to help them entering our business. Yeah, so for many others, it might be simply by giving them the opportunity to participate and respond to some RFPs, because that will create the mindset, okay, this is how large corporations work. This is the kind of documents that they present. And by the way, this is the big thing that we need to be mindful of. When we send contract templates, like hundreds of pages for a small business to respond to, we usually don't understand the burden that creates on them. And I don't want to know really how many actually give up on offering their services just because of all of those, you know, process steps and due diligence and onboarding and everything. So it's a big challenge that all of us here, we have to solve, because we might not be looking at it from their perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, just to say, I think it's like a twofold. We need to, now that we've established just how important and how incredible social enterprises are and the benefit that they have for both sides of the coin, it's now we need to start to think bigger, and we need to start thinking about, as you say, and this comes into our diversity and inclusion piece, you know, in terms of our supply chain and the way that we're thinking, and having just that bias of thinking a particular way, and now realizing actually that we need to start opening us up, we need to start approaching, we need to start thinking from other perspectives to really get to meaningful change. And I think as well, like just in pragmatically from like thinking how a social enterprise can meet the needs of, you've got such a diverse different sectors, you know, we're obviously professional services, you know, if you're thinking about just the way that an office functions, and a way that you might not want to put all your eggs in, you know, currently all the eggs are technically in one basket, so you don't want to separate them out because that's not cost or time, if all those kinds of things come into play. So that's why I think as well it makes it a bit more difficult to engage with a social enterprise. However, that's where we've got to see how we can do that, and you know, see what we can do to start to change that dialogue.
Excellent.
Sonia, I think, has got
Oliver, if I may just add one more thing, because I think it is
please do.
important to the procurement folks here on the call. Those of us who have been working on category management for many, many years. I mean, category management was, I don't know, is something from the 80s or the 90s, perhaps. By applying category management techniques, we would never be working with social enterprise, because this is about consolidating spend, you know, mapping what is commodity, what is strategic, etc. And my advice is look at social business as the strategic objective that you want to achieve. Forget for a little bit about category management, because otherwise you'll never do business with social business, social enterprises, sorry. I just wanted to make that point as well.
That's a really good point. Oliver, can I make a quick point? I've just put a link in the...
Lucy will come to you next.
Oh, sorry, Oliver. I just put a link in the chat, which was written by our sales director, who's on the board of Social Enterprise UK. And we wrote this as a guide some time back for procurement professionals, because we're like, well, these are the questions to ask to help them navigate some people who are maybe being less than honest. So it's all about who are you actually transacting with? Are they a member of Social Enterprise UK? Are they giving do they disclose full accounts? Is there an audit trail? And it's just a little guide to the extent a number of our customers starting putting it into their tenders. So, you know, one thing I see in the sector a lot is there's people that have got all the credentials and all the kind of, we do this and this and this, and then they'll not give full financial disclosure. You go, well, why aren't you shouting from the rooftops where your money goes? Yeah. It's okay, it's a small amount, because maybe you're not making much, but tell people. And so there's just little things you can do to ask the right questions. And the good news is, and there's so many good social enterprises out there, the good ones will light up and be delighted to tell you the answers. You know what I mean?
So those questions we will add to the digest and make them crystal clear in that toolkit for everyone listening in and so on, because I think that's a cracker. Lucy, apologies. Well, your thoughts on what's been said so far?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything that has been said, and also pointing that Sonia, I believe, wants to add something.
You can shout a bit louder.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that I need to.
That's all right, don't worry.
I was saying that I couldn't agree more with everything that has been shared, and especially your point, Matt, on chicken and egg, and that's exactly what we see we just enter into this offer and demand market, and it's really about how do you push for the offer and being sure that the demand is going to be there. I think that one of the angles that we are trying to take, and that we've seen as being very successful, is really this idea of ramping up the partnerships and not expecting to have the supplier to be fully ready, what we call corporate ready, at all level, and especially on the quantity and all the volumes that you might expect if you want to be optimizing your procurement. But it's really about how do you work together for the coming 3 years. So how do you open, first of all, the doors of your procurement and start to pilot and looking for like one office or one specific collection or one example that you can get, and then like giving them this plan on if you reach this quality, if you reach this compliance level, if you reach this quantity capacity, then we can move on and work together on that. And I found this Mongolia example that we've seen to be very successful. So we're going to try to build that as well with unusual partners.
Excellent points. All right, we should get on with questions from the audience. So Sonia, would you be able to share some questions? And as I said, if anyone does want to voice their question, which we're looking for quick answers, by the way, panel, because we want to get through as many as we can. So don't feel like you need to answer every question. Sonia.
Thanks. I had promised the audience I would address the questions. I hate not delivering on my promises. I was getting really nervous here.
Consider myself told. Okay.
So there was a question from Brenda Sperry. She was asking about what factors value do you look for in your social partnerships that determine success? But I think we have spoken quite a bit about it already. Yeah. So hopefully this has addressed your question, Brenda. George Diamantidis, and I apologize if I don't pronounce everybody's name properly. Would you like to raise your question, or do you want me to?
George, do you want to? Are you there? I'll give you a second or two if you're not.
I thought I had just heard him.
All right, go on then.
He was asking, Jamie, can you please share what best practices Zurich picked up from the consultancy company?
Good question. So what sort of results did you get from that?
We still use the company. I think that's the shortest way to, we still do business, and actually we try to open up even more business with them. We recognize them as something very unique. They have a completely different proposition, business-wise, but also socially. And yeah, we maintain the relationship.
I suppose that's an important metric. You know, if you're working with social enterprises and spending more with social enterprises, your procurement rules should indicate that that's a good thing.
Yeah. So if I would receive an NPS survey, it would be a 10.
Interesting. Good to hear. I've no idea what that survey is, but it sounds important and sounds very relevant for procurement. Sonia, your next question. What have we got next?
We had a question from Sunita to Michael. Do Wildhearts work with the public sector as well?
Do you know what's interesting? We used to all crack up laughing, and that you'd have politicians talking about their big social mission and their this, and that. Go, well, why? Why do you not have any of it attributed in your tender documents? And I think actually be a good Colin. Do you want to jump on here, Colin Downey? Fascinatingly, the traction and the momentum and the energy is in the private sector, and that's Wildhearts' experience. Now, there is some very interesting work, brilliant work being done in the Social Value Act in the UK, which is giving more weight. But Colin, what's your, if you don't mind, just your take on like the Social Value Act? And I know we don't have much time, but reasons maybe why social procurement has not taken off as much in the public sector.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, it's Colin. I've worked with Mick for many years in the Wildhearts group, and I'm the sales director. I also sit on the board of Social Enterprise UK. I think broadly, corporates have the ability to make quicker decisions. Corporates and SMEs, they can possibly take more risk because they have a broadly speaking, a lower risk profile than the using public money. So they can assess, I think, quite quicker if something's working, and they can make decisions, you know, to stop working with social enterprises quickly if they're not getting the right supply support that is required. Public sector for many years has always looked for the cheapest route, lots of cutbacks, always trying to find the cheaper suppliers. And I think historically that's tended to move them towards a lot of bigger suppliers, of which social enterprises, you know, are growing all the time. And there is lots of discussions I'm seeing in the chat about investment in the social enterprise space. You know, the big social enterprises, like Matt said, there's just not that many of us, but I think it will turn over time as more social enterprises get their opportunity. Public sector has evolved over the years to try and include weightings and metrics, because they have to be extremely transparent about how they assess social enterprises and other businesses, and needs to give a weighting to be cognizant of what we'll do with our profit. You know, our profit's invested outside of our business in our social outcomes and doesn't have the same reinvestment cycle that might otherwise be available. So it's taking time, but there's been a lot of changes from the Cabinet Office in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, and in central government to ensure that weightings are there in procurement. All the normal risk processes apply, but increasing the amount of points that's available to specifically regulated and transparent social enterprises, it is changing. So for 10 years, we've cut our teeth in sort of private SME and corporate space. We've grown to where we've got to, but in the last 2 years, we've started dipping our toe in public procurement space. So we are on one of the main CCS frameworks for office supplies, printing, promotional merchandise. We're also on a very large NHS SBS framework for document storage. And that's a big milestone for our business, where we can be identified by public procurement professionals without necessarily having to do the ground, the business development work on the ground. So things are changing, but public procurement's always a bit slow.
Yeah, it can be. That was a very good answer, very comprehensive. I'm conscious of more questions. Again, we will come to these questions, even if we send these to the guys later and they come back and answer them later, we will get to them. Joe, I'd like to bring you in from Yunus and share your thoughts on that and anything else you've heard.
Thanks, Oliver. So I think another challenge and roadblock to the growth of the social business sector, both in terms of working with public but also large corporations, is the fact that it's difficult at this point to define and also identify and verify social businesses. So that is a gap that I think is being actively filled right now through various means. And that's, for example, through our partners that aggregate and verify or even certify social businesses. But yeah, that's one of the challenges that I see, but that we're also actively working to solve through certification and verification.
Excellent.
I think this is a nice segue actually to a question that came from Telma Santos. She was asking, when we buy fair trade, are we engaging with the social businesses then?
Interesting.
Anyone wants to pick that one up?
It's deep in thought, this question. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Can we rely on certifications? Can we rely on other types of sustainable approaches to be considered social businesses? Yeah, interesting.
So isn't it interesting, like the debate is, what is the purpose of a social business? To create social impact. So if a company is privately owned but delivers exquisite social impact, is that worthy of merit in its own right? I think what's good about the social enterprise structure is it does give that verification and does give that comfort factor of when, as the movement grows, you're going to need more compliance and to report against compliance. And so it builds in those comfort factors. I'm personally much more interested in the delivery of the impact. And then if you're doing that right, it tends to find that the verifications come along with that if you're doing it for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
One quick thing that we've noticed, Oliver, is when I've been working with some of our friends in procurement when they want to increase their social impact purchasing globally, how the different jurisdictions are not aligned. And even the different tax regimes. Some of the European countries, if you say we donate 100% of our profits, you still won't get the tax relief on that. So you're paying tax on money you're donating to a social purpose. And we found it quite a bit of a struggle to try and find a uniform jurisdiction for what we're doing in the UK across Europe.
Yes. Excellent. I'm very conscious of time, guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to run a very quick final poll where you, the 98 people, the hardy few that have stuck with us, will get to decide how we focus on this topic moving forward, what sort of tools and capabilities. So we're going to run that in 1 minute. But Sonia, any more questions that we want to cover? Anything else that you thought was interesting that we should pull out there?
There was a similar question as the one I just asked from Kunal, who was asking if we run a diversity supplier program, can we consider that also as being a social procurement program?
Yeah, indeed. Kunal, I think you had your hand up. Do you want to just expand on that question quickly? You feel that?
Yeah. So if it is considered, then there are some companies like, we are a steel company, and our customers like Chrysler in the US and in North American perimeter, they are pushing for this kind of initiative for having a diversified supplier program in your purchasing panel. So this also comes with the Jamie's comment when he says that commodity managers or procurement professionals have to consider these commodities not as commodities but on strategic level. So when it comes to from the customer, then we have to think on a more strategic basis that how can we maximize our participation in these kind of initiatives to have the maximum or to qualify for the offers as well.
Yeah.
So again, whether it's social or not, I'm not sure. That's why I asked this question. Yeah. And then it also answers a bit of Jamie's section where he says that commodity managers have to be more involved in these kind of things.
Any brief thoughts on that, guys? I think it was more of a comment, Cornell, actually. It was a really good one. It's thinking about it as value chain as well. What your customers are asking you to do, how can you pass that? And this is a value chain conversation. This is an opportunity to pass that pass that on.
I think that there is not a black and white, Oliver. Many social enterprise, their mission is to bring diversity either in their workforce or as a business owned as well. So we have, I know of companies that try to employ people with different spectrums of autism in their workforce. You know, so it's not 0 or 1. It's not binary here. That's my short answer.
Yeah, excellent. Before I thank you and we round up, I am just going to launch this poll because I think it's an important thing to do. So what would you like us to burrow into next? Because we, as I said, we're really focused on turning this into practical tools, lists, questions for everybody. It's very, very important. So have a little look at the poll that should be live now and choose what topics, what particular aspects of this topic do you want us to burrow into? I'm sure all of it's relevant. Anyone want to, Mick, what do you reckon the top one is so far? Oh, I know I'm the only one who can see it, but what do you reckon it is?
Which topics would you have?
What does everyone want to know? Anyone else on the panel want to guess before I press?
Wait. Which topics?
Come on, Mick, make a decision.
Training, maybe awareness within the organization.
Well,
I hope it will be training. I hope it will not be measurement.
Awareness, I would say. Let's see.
I can assume that there will be a lot on leadership also. How do you engage with your manager?
Oh, Jamie.
I was going to say measuring impact because this is what procurement people want to do all the time, measure impact.
We can talk about procurement people evolving and becoming procurement people of the future, but there's still that DNA inside them wanting to measure that impact. So, no, as I said, I think that's helping to identify social businesses. That to me suggests people want to use them. That's a good thing. So can I just say a huge thanks to all of you as speakers and for all of you as attendees. And